broadband. And so I'm excited about what we've accomplished, and Bob tells us we've got a green light in terms of streaming the meeting, and so thank you, Bob, for that. Why don't we start with introductions? I'm Bill Simmons, and working with the Broadband Consortium.
Ray Hayward, Water Einstein.
Paul Chenet, Cuyama Community Services District.
Morning, Brian Ganley, County of Ventura. Keith Brooks, City of Oxnard.
Bob Allen, KTV.com.
Brian Chong, City of Moore Park.
Cesar Perez, Impulse Advanced Communications. Jory Wolf, General Advisors.
Sasha Burrows, Civic Spark, LGC fellow working with
Clint Carmen.
Mayor of San Paul.
Bruce Stensley, EDC.
Andy Sobel, Santa Claus City Council.
John Proctor, Farm City Council.
Steve Weingard, Ridge Communications.
Stephen Sawyer with Charter.
Bob, did you introduce yourself? I don't remember.
Yes, sir.
On the phone, one at a time.
This is Steve Carr, retired CTO from the Ventura County Office of Ed.
Hi, Steve.
Morning, Bill.
Gil Deming with Spectrum Enterprise.
Hi, Gil.
Good morning. Tim Cool, City of Ventura.
Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hey. Heather Alban, the City of Tavenos.
Hi, Hader.
Morning.
Anybody else on the phone? All right. Sounds like we have a quorum. Let's move on to just talking a little bit about the agenda. We're gonna go over what CPUC pays us to do in terms of priority areas. We're gonna talk a little bit about anchor institutions and the municipality roadmap. There's a number of municipalities with us, and was hoping, I'll plant the seed now. If you've got some updates that you can share, that'd be great. We're gonna talk about the website. Greg will give us an updated tour. See if there's any ideas out there about the Fall Summit in October. And talk a little bit about where we're gonna be going this year, partnering opportunities, maybe some grant funding, those kinds of things. So, priority areas. I think we've used this slide a number of times now. We're paid by the Public Utilities Commission to go and close the gaps in rural areas, their priority areas. This is a map that they've provided us. And what's interesting about in the numbers that they calculated, that they envision that the communities have, and it's been validated from a number of you folks that, yep, your community has, and pockets have been identified, opportunities there to take care of closing those gaps.
What people or what's the
residences?
Residents. So seven residents in Ojai.
Yeah.
That are covered. Okay. That's pretty
I'm
specific.
not gonna vouch for that. I've seen the data. I mean, it may be 70, but it's yeah. It's
residents,
low.
you said, right?
Yeah.
Residents, so you said more people.
Yeah. So I've shared with you the last week or two in terms of the weekly updates, the link to this particular map. It's the CPUC map, broadband map.ca.gov. And this is new in that the data is 12 months later. I think the last data we were looking for was in December of 16. Now we're looking at December of 17. And what's interesting about it is we've got some more granularity in terms of some of the shapes in the map. And the beige areas are areas that qualify for funding for the CSF funds. And the hash areas are those that are been marked by providers involved with the Connect America Fund. And so Connect America Fund is for providers that are using those funds that have been set aside to bring up the infrastructure in those areas. And so the question would be, if you're gonna have Connect America funding, why would you apply for CSF funding? And so what you're really looking for is the beige areas absent the hash areas that are on top of it. So for those people that have a chance to take a look at it, number one, it's better data, it's more accurate data, but number two, it also points to areas that are clear and compelling as opportunities. These are areas that you wouldn't necessarily have a challenge, because you can't say that a provider would be bringing it up with Connect America Fund areas. And Paul, this would be something we'd want to drill down a little bit more in terms of Cuyama. You know, I think if I looked at the Cuyama area in this, related to this, there are some Connect America Fund opportunities there, but you also have some beige area in and around the areas, you know, where you could probably qualify for funding as well. So we'll take a look at this. But the message here is it's interesting. It's very interesting. It is more accurate than what we've had in the past, and we're taking some time to look at it.
Bill, I haven't clicked on it yet, but if you go to that site, is it reasonably interactive? Can you get more detail in the picture? Can you zoom in and get more neighborhood? Okay.
Although these things are check boxes that you can, you know, do as qualifiers.
Their overall GIS capability is leap ahead in terms of what they're telling us now.
So I looked at it for Oxnard and I couldn't find any unserved. If you count every category, I'm not sure what the definition of unserved is, but if you turn on the various cellular layers, in addition to the wired layers, you can't find an area that's unserved, which makes it difficult to qualify for any types of funding.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Yeah, your work here is done.
You're good to go.
I'm not talking about bandwidth, I'm talking about you can get something.
We were sitting with some folks at the EDC function last week, and Nyland Acres came up as a place that is in desperate need of broadband access. Are you aware of that?
I don't remember if it was on a survey or not.
So, it's interesting, and I told them that we would try to connect to get them some speed dating and figure out who can serve them in that area.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is Nyland Acres in Oxnard or out in the county unincorporated area?
Part's incorporated, part unincorporated, I believe. It depends on, the neighborhood's sort of a vague definition, I think.
It may be not in
part of
Oxnard
it.
per se.
I know some of it is unincorporated.
You have regular visitors to council complaining about the lack of high-speed internet.
Okay, so I moved on to the next one. We're gonna try to go through these pretty fast and leave some time to digest and drill down in certain areas where inspired. Not much to update you on in this area today. I put question marks after each of these items because these are things that we're all talking about, we're thinking about. I'm hoping that we get some traction in over the course of the next few months. Mike Pettit created the image on the right about 2-3 years ago, and I keep bringing it forward because I thought it was a compelling image of trying to create a regional network of sorts. And in his mind, he was looking to link county institutions, but if indeed we're going to be doing that kind of thing, what are the opportunities to share and to build and interlink community networks? And so hopefully we'll be able to get some traction on that. And as we do, there's big questions about what that looks like and how it works. I heard, Terry, you look like you were about to take a breath.
No,
Anybody,
I'm taking a breath, just, I'm having a beer.
In support of this so far, though, Sasha has been tabulating anchor institutions, starting to coordinate it with cities. I think you shared it with Oxnard and Ventura, just because there's a lot of work being done by Jory in those two areas. And so we're just wanting to see how it all shakes out and to come up with a plan that deals with the anchor institutions in the cities and what the cities are looking for.
Bill, could you, for us newbies, explain what an anchor institution is? Like that. I know that I put you on the spot about that before, but also.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was I may have published the actual definition a month or so back, but.
Just for some examples, maybe.
Yeah, it's, an anchor institution are critical assets. They're organizations that you want to preserve and stay connected to. City hall, police stations, hospitals, fire stations. In a number of definitions, 501c3s that are going to be used in disaster recovery is places where you connect and, have muster points, if you will, or service providers, in those crisis times. They're your anchors, your community anchors, and so utilities, they could be public, they could be private, or they certainly, but they're functional, to keep the city healthy. So, there is a formal definition, but I just don't have it memorized.
Bill?
Yes.
This is Steve. I would also just remind you that educational district offices oftentimes, or county offices of ed, community colleges, all of those could be considered to be anchor institutions as well.
I think that in the map we've done, we've counted all schools as community anchors.
Right.
So.
Well, typically the way most of those networks are designed is they're hub and spoke networks that usually originate at a district office and then feed out to those schools. And then again, they all home back to the county office. So just, that's kind of the topology of how it works.
Okay. Any other comments about this? Hope to provide you more insight in the next meeting, and at least in terms of some of the things we're looking at. They say that the way you get real activities defined is through storming, forming, norming, and performing. Well, we're doing a lot of storming right now, and so we're at the front end of this funnel. But as we get into the next stages of development, we'll be wanting to brief you on that as well. Okay. Municipality roadmap updates. We published about a year and a half ago, a municipality roadmap. And it was basically, in Santa Paula as a community, has been almost a textbook in terms of following the roadmap. It's get leadership commitment, in terms of creating an awareness and getting a commitment. And the next phase is start to look internally and do some things as a community, look at your assets, and then finally do some planning and come up with a plan and start marching in terms of where you want to go in terms of becoming a smart city. And so everybody's got their own journey. It's very unique to your organizations and your municipalities. And it's exciting to see, because this last year, a number of you took off and went. And so, this is a time that we want to, number one, I'd like to reiterate if there's anything that the consortium can do to help, to connect you, to support you in terms of what you're doing. We stand ready and want to do that, and we'll continue to do that. But in the meantime, the journey's yours. And so I'd like to open up the floor and just start talking and sharing in terms of where each of you are at, what you're looking at, what you've learned, and any lessons that you can share with the other cities. Keith, I'm gonna look at you first, if you don't mind, and you can.
So we doing a fire master plan along with the city of Ventura and others. We've engaged Magellan Consultants. George here, so you can correct me if I'm making up stuff. We are at a draft review of the master plan document now, so we're looking at the, I think, 4 or 5 phases that are in the plan to walk us from where we are with our fiber we have in the ground to getting set up to have it start to generate some revenue for the city, and then to show how we can build off of that and have it expand. I think the primary recommendation and theme has been the P3 partnerships. If I found there's gold underneath the ground in the city of Oxnard, I'm not necessarily equipped to mine it and get it out and make money off of it. And that's sort of analogous to what we have as fiber. It's kind of like a forever renewable natural resource that's there that we can have generate money for the residents. But we have to figure out how to tap into it. And it may not be appropriate. It probably isn't appropriate for cities, municipalities, counties to do it all themselves. Nor does the public probably trust us. It's been a complaint. At the beginning of our fiber master plan, they would come up to council and say, why should we trust you? Seeing how you've handled our other funds, why should we trust you to provide internet to us? Well, we provide the cable. That's the easy part. It's in the ground, and then connecting to it, lighting it up, maintenance, service, support, sales, all those we're gonna farm out to other professionals that can handle or equipped to, rather than try to build that expertise in-house, which is a model that's worked to some extent, but well in other places and not so well in others. That's kind of where we are. We're hoping to have our plan in front of our city council in the next couple of months, depending on where we are. And, get some traction and start looking at how we fund it. Jordan?
Well, Oxnard's been pretty much dedicated to building out its fiber plant for the last 12 years or so.
Yeah.
And so, unique about Oxnard is that they've got a fairly large fiber infrastructure already, and it's well designed. It's loop-based in design, and it's a large strand count running down, I'd say 85% of all the major commercial corridors. So in terms of the city's readiness, compared to a lot of other cities, that network is really well designed and primed and ready to be looked at by P3s in an RFP process if the city council decides to go in that direction, and to commercialize the asset and to have a P3 market maintain and to operate the network for businesses. Initially, the effort would be, the first phase would be to expand some of the fiber in a cost-effective way through empty conduit, and there's some twisted pair copper that needs to be pulled out for some traffic signal work that they need to do anyway, which will have a co-benefit for municipal operations as well as the commercialization of the broadband network. But they've got a 4-phase plan, and they're ready to go if this is a decision council wants to make. Interestingly, on the notion of trusting government, it's a matter of not only do we make wise budget decisions, but I was doing a presentation at Cal State Northridge a couple weeks ago, and it was obviously full of, I don't know, probably 150 people who were under the age of 25. And so it's not a typical group of people I talk with. And when I spoke about work that government does in the space of broadband networks for municipal innovations and for smart city and IoT, they were all like, well, that's all well and good, but we don't trust government. And we wouldn't, procure, our broadband from a government network, municipal network. Because it turned out that we give them parking tickets and moving citations, and we tax them, and we do all the kinds of other nasty things that make their lives more difficult. So interestingly, that was the beginning of the conversation. I had an hour. So I was sort of giving them bits and pieces, dribs and drabs about, now how do you feel about government in the broadband space? And after I would add intelligent transportation, and then I would add real-time parking, and then I would add things like free internet through public Wi-Fi. And so the pot got a little sweeter. Each time I'd ask for a show of hands and how many people thought government investing in municipal broadband was a good thing. It went from 0 to 15% to about 25%. And anyway, the point is, by the time I got to the end, I still didn't have but maybe about 80%. And so the final kicker, after all the good things showing what government can do with broadband for the community, the final kicker was, okay, what if we flushed our logs every night and we couldn't trace who was on the network? 100%.
Did net neutrality come up at all?
Yeah, it did, a lot. And that was one of the benefits that we got a lot of hands on. But we didn't get full investment from the group until we flushed the logs and until there was privacy and confidentiality.
Interesting. And Keith, are you finding that the city council has been supportive in these efforts?
Yeah, very supportive. Obviously, they had to approve us using tax revenue to fund the RFP, to hire a consultant, and to pursue the fiber master plan. It was a little easier for us because we piggybacked on an ITS master plan that put in $10 or $12 million worth of fiber in 10 or 12 years ago. And, at the time, I asked them to triple the amount of fiber. So we have loads of dark fiber there, and unlike other technologies, this one's improved in value with the new technology available for lighting up fiber with multiple wavelengths. So I don't know the exact numbers, but what used to be 1-to-1 on one strand is now maybe
Infinity.
I wouldn't go to infinity, but it's
Near infinity. It's color dependent.
the numbers changed over time.
Yeah.
So it's not been a depreciating asset in that regard. But we've also been sitting on it until this point to decide, okay, let's find a plan that doesn't cost the city that much, which is where the P3 partnership comes into place. So how can we leverage a partner and start having revenue generated off this so it can fund itself, where we don't have to go to the residents and say, give me some more money to trust us, we're gonna do a good job. So, yeah, I think we have an executive sponsor in our mayor who did get reelected. So we've got a continued presence there, and he understands it, understands the importance of it as high-tech, biotech, pharmaceuticals, higher-end jobs that he wants to attract to the city. And they need a high-speed pipe for everything that's gonna do. So he understands that, while others in the city have no idea what you're talking about. So a lot of what we covered in our meeting yesterday with the county and Rory and others is the need for education, where my peer department heads don't understand what we have to do. The permanent mindset change that fiber is going to bring to our city. It's not a project, a one-time decision, and then it's disappeared. No, it's a permanent decision. We're gonna go down this road and we're gonna continue that direction forever. So list your ordinances, your dig once, your
Wireless
master license
ordinances,
agreements,
master license agreements,
wireless ordinances.
fiber ordinances, and of course dig ones. And this isn't just an IT project, it's really a citywide project, and in all of the work that we do, we try to engage all the departments in working with IT, sort of as the the one who introduces the city to the concept of the value of broadband for technical innovation within the community. But it's really up to everybody to do their part in building the broadband asset, or in maintaining the broadband asset, in creating a policy landscape that facilitates others to invest in broadband in the community, for the city to invest in broadband in the community, and for the fiber assets and wireless assets to be grown and expanded cost effectively. Which means Public Works has their work cut out for them quite a bit, because a lot of it's in the public right of way. And a lot of it's permitting from others that are doing encroachment and attachment work. And it's also planning for development agreements, for new property developments, things that are changing the landscape. It's planning for rezoning efforts and general plan efforts, specific plans, and the like. No building within a community today should be built without it being connected to some broadband asset somewhere.
Right. Want to keep this moving? Bob, you have something, and then we'll
Just
move on?
just a quick question. In reality, Oxnard is working on a big project to repave most of their streets, which have gone. Wouldn't this be a perfect time to be doing what's being done?
Well, as our plan will point out, which is kind of a funny thing to point out, but might actually remove it, is that most of our resurfacing doesn't dig deep enough to put conduit in. There are pocket CIP projects around that will be digging, trenching, which would allow us to put.
Yeah, I'm just saying a coordinating effort.
Sure,
Okay,
and that's part of
than,
we're meeting on the dig once policy
Okay.
now with the other departments. And they're the rubber meets the road people and the planning people who have never talked to IT before. We just fix their computers. So we're educating and introducing the concept to them that Jory's talking about, where you've got to think globally now, how we're gonna get this utility put in.
Okay.
But to that avail, in the nineties and 2000s in Los Angeles, and I'm not sure if it hit Santa Monica, these alternative fiber carriers that existed buried fiber in the streets, on the repaving, or they actually, in most cases, they caused the repaving because the streets so bad. But if you might remember, they buried, MFS, if you remember them?
I was just gonna say, you mean MFS.
MFS, right, okay, so they buried fiber, like.
We have another definition of that acronym.
Yeah, okay, right, exactly, but I'm just pointing out that stuff's still being used today. I mean, it was all acquired by Pacific Bell and then now AT&T, but it's still being used, and it still was a fast way to get the fiber to the front doors of these businesses. And so.
MFS became AboveNet became Zayo, so it's not a municipal asset, it's a fiber asset.
My understanding was AT&T bought most of MFS, but doesn't matter.
It depends on the territory.
All I'm saying was, but it was shallow. It was they had a name for it. I can't remember anymore. It was eons ago. It was like a shallow dig. Remember they put it in the crevice?
Oh, you're thinking about microtrenching?
Microtrenching.
Terrible idea.
I'm not suggesting it, but I'm just saying,
Done.
we're supposed to be a think tank to take us to, providing service as quickly as possible. That was something that was utilized, as far as I know, it's still being utilized, and, whatever that means. It did mess up the streets.
I've written down 7 names in terms of updates here, so I'm gonna keep moving to various cities to allow each of you to give a shot, so all of these conversations will apply to all of these communities. So, Tim, do you have a couple of bullets or talking points you want to just share with us concerning Ventura?
Sure, we're following along very closely with Oxnard. We're a few months behind. Also, our approach is probably a little different. We don't have the assets in place like Oxnard does. So primarily, we're looking for policy, ordinance, design guidelines, which is big ones, and joint trench, so we take advantage of CIP projects whenever the road is open, but we do need the guidelines that the gentleman will be producing. As well, we're looking at educating our new city manager and new council members. We have support from some existing council members, but we want to bring the rest of the team up to speed. And we're looking at doing that in the near future with Jory and his team.
Thank you. And you somewhere in that whole analysis, you got your traffic signals and that network tied in, right?
Yes, we're doing an RFP for a new traffic communication system, which is pulling out the old wires and putting in fiber. Possibly some conduit needs to be replaced because of the age and the smaller size. But that's going out to RFP as well. We'll be documenting our INET and seeing what, for the city and for the INET constituents, what kind of a network we have. We just want to document, so that's part of that as well. But for the new traffic system, that would be our primary asset to start leveraging and make this a sustainable, self-sustaining model in the near future.
Great, thank you. Ryan.
Sure, so we were one of those quote other cities that Dory referred to, in that in Moorpark, we're a smaller city, we're a newer city, we have 0 fiber infrastructure currently that is owned by the city. We do have the good fortunes that as a newer city, our residential areas are, for our intents purposes, 100% covered with broadband. So our focus in the broadband space is to hit our 2 large business park areas that currently are not well served. We've been talking with multiple ISPs. We have 2 that are actively looking at these 2 areas right now, one through the air and one in the ground. And we actually, your question, Bill, was specific to lessons learned that can be shared. So, based on the traction that we had on this, our big deliverable is we have the political will. We were directed by our council to form a subcommittee of 2 council members and staff to work towards this effort and to get an RFP out to hire a broadband expert, which our staff of 50 does not have on staff. That document is fully drafted, and we've got a few more. Attorneys always want to dot a few more I's than we write it. But we actually put it briefly on hold, figuring, well, if one or both of these, these companies we're working with are going to put it in, that's gonna happen faster than anything that we do on the policy side. So we actually stalled it for a little while, and actually just yesterday I was having a chat with our city manager, and we said, well, no. Even if they both come in, we still need to do the things legislatively to promote more broadband development. We still need a Dig Once policy. We still need the wireless telecommunications ordinance modernized for 5G and beyond. So we still need this consultant to do that, because Brian, you don't know how to do that. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. So my marching orders as of yesterday were, no, put this back, take it off the back burner and put it back on the front burner. And so we should be having that. I'm hoping to take it to council early in March for release. But it exists. It's fairly thick, but it's there. So again, our lesson learned, essentially just keep going, because even if you hit this home run, you still have 8 more innings to play.
The elections have a way of taking the air out of progress sometimes.
Elections, and right now for a lot of us, it's district elections, and that transition, which is just a time suck for municipal resources.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you, Brian. John, you're the recently departed, but you're also one of our stars when it comes to broadband forums and talking lessons learned. I'm gonna let you cue it up for your colleagues.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Just to give you a little background on Santa Paula, I did speak the last our conference, but in our case, we have a new development, Harvest Lehman-Air, 1,500 units in Santa Paula, and an outfit called Digital West, and Tim Williams is the guy who was doing the regional mapping on one of the previous slides, is with them, and they're bringing in gigabit service to this new development. And my biggest concern right off was that we don't create a digital divide, or what I call the tale of two cities. And so I've been meeting with Bill Simmons. He's been kind of guiding us. He gets paid to do that. That's great. We can use his resources. And we did something at his request, or his idea. We did a little speed dating in terms of talking to different providers. And so, best I can put it now, it's a work in progress, but we have a new council, and it's interesting. It's not so much a lack of progress because of political will. It's sort of like, it's like taking a breath. We have 4 out of 5 council members that are new. And I should say new, but we had almost a complete turnover, and Clint is our mayor now. Clint and I were serving as the ad hoc. Andy Sobel here is replacing me, and Andy is also a software developer, and so he has more aptitude than I did. And I think the next step is for the two of them to create that political will in Santa Paula. And we did give a presentation, Bruce helped out on that. And like I said, we're just sort of taking a breath, but the reason I brought them over today was to introduce them to all of you, and it's really this kind of cross-pollination that happens here.
One of the things when Bruce gave his presentation was your council talked about maybe a listening session or some kind of workshop, or have you thought about that anymore? What would you be trying to accomplish, or what kind of resources? Don't need to answer it. Maybe if you don't want to dive too deep in it, but I just was curious if you thought about it anymore. What the council? How could we help educate the council? What would you want to hear, learn, understand?
Well, that's something for them to move forward. I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak for them.
No, you've been great. John's been helpful, same with Bill. Obviously, Bill having some roots in Santa Paula too, knowing our infrastructure, knowing the delicacy of making sure that both of our growth, our 1,500 homes, ties into the rest of the city. We have this beautiful new development, but also over on Peck Road, that's been there since day one. How do you actually tie in and make sure that all these same services, everyone has the broadband that everybody has, I guess, access to, especially our students. So we're working, Bill's educating me, I'm newer, you guys are pros, and I'm listening more than anything. So I'm digging all this, even the Dig Once and everything that we've been talking about. It's just so helpful to us as we move forward. Same thing, our roads, it's the same thing, trying to infrastructure as we recreate or redo, and make sure that we just don't make the same mistakes. So I'm thankful for listening. So anything you wish to add?
Another component too, that apart from the divide, so to speak, is there's a commercial industrial area that's gonna be coming in called East Area 2 in conjunction. And we would like to see that be lit up and be, hopefully be a magnet for some good high-tech companies. I brought up something that was explained to me that people were driving down to Santa Monica because of the high-speed fiber to do their work. So in a way, they were commuting by car to telecommute. And why not, what's easier to build, highways or fiber highways?
I will say just from the Moore Park side, we're happy to, I mean, we know Connie well, and we talk regularly, but, you know, we'll share research, we'll share documents, we're here to help regionally, so.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you guys. Any thoughts you wanna, welcome.
Well, thank you. I have no thoughts, but I do have a question. I don't know if it's
Sure.
later. Well, I'm trying to, there seems to be a balance more ground versus air. I'm kind of curious about that. I would expect that there's more broadcast versus cable at this point, so.
Like the 5G or fiber?
Yeah, I think that we recognize there is a role for air, certainly in the last mile. But one thing that air is gonna need is the backhaul. And so, you know, I think that where we're all understanding is we may not get it to every doorstep, but we certainly wanna have a regional infrastructure that's gonna provide, you know, a way to interconnect and provide the backhaul. And so, where they start having microcells, you know, on telephone poles in the corners of the neighborhood or whatever, it's still gonna need fiber in those sites. So, yeah, there is a lot of last mile versus air fiber discussion going on, but we're not going there. We're working on a regional network, we're working on how do you have your community networks and just have a lot of capacity. And that's something we all agree on.
And I can share after the meeting, I'll be happy to share our thoughts on it.
John introduced you as a software kind of guy. Are you in applications development or?
Yeah, what applications, worked with Bruce a long time ago on a county website for the film industry that mostly do web-based application stuff. So not this kind of stuff.
But you certainly understand fiber and
Yes.
you need to connect.
Yes. And I have plenty of complaints about it, so.
Yes. That's how this group started.
Potholes and fiber.
So, Paul, I'm gonna shift to you just to talk about your little community of Cuyama, the journey you've had. I mean, Santa Paula's got one issue, but I mean, you remove it by distance, and you get to see the bigger issue.
Well, I started in this area in Santa Paula, and I actually was the superintendent of the school district there, so, and in those days, we were trying to get broadband access to students, but in Cuyama, the only thing I actually did a grant and brought broadband to the schools, but that's limited to the schools, and that's all by air. It's licensed microwave, and we come from the Kern County Office of Education, where we originally. But the remainder of the community is literally, other than hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots and satellite, it's devoid of any communications as far as broadband internet, including many areas that don't even have cell service. And so I think of my general region, since I was the superintendent of schools up there also, is the school district, and we're about 726 square miles. And we have about, depending on how you calculate it, about 2,000 or 2,300 residents. So it's a large, expansive area with no service. And so I've worked with Digital West a little bit, trying to come up with a plan for bringing service in there even temporarily. The only good thing I was successful in doing was I did build a 165-foot tower there on the school property. And so that is available for use. The school district it will gladly, because it helps their students. So the main population area is the community of New Cuyama, which is an unincorporated. The only governmental agency there is the Cuyama Community Services District, of which I'm the president of the board on. And so I don't really have much to report other than there's a lot of roadblocks and it's hard to get traction to bring any kind of service there. And so, if anybody has any ideas, I'd love to put fiber in the ground, but that's an expensive proposition and the terrain is difficult. So, there's really only a couple ways into the community. There you can come in from Maricopa, which is on the Kern County side. You can come in from Santa Maria, or you can come through Ojai, but that road's been closed for the last few weeks because of the mudslides. So it's a difficult area to navigate.
How do you normally go?
I usually go through Ojai and over 33, but then if that's closed, I go over the I-5.
Yeah.
And you know, a variety of ways.
Yeah.
But I actually live up there part-time. It's my residence, that's why I'm on the community services district.
Right. Well, I really wanna spend some time creating a little team with you for that particular area. That's the one accomplishment we wanna, you know, see occur.
Right, and one other thing is there are a couple nonprofits that work in the area. One in particular is called Blue Sky Center, which is a rural economic development nonprofit, and we've recently, I'm actually on the board of that also, and we've recently acquired a grant from the USDA for rural business development. And the big need is it's very difficult to do business development without internet service. Extremely difficult.
Have other cities applied for the same USDA money? Do you know about that?
The pile is underserved. There's 1.7 billion, they've given out less than 200 million.
And is that on the Reconnect? Well, Reconnect grants is 600 million.
Yeah.
But this, the business development grant was, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, there's 6 federal agencies that have a lot of money, and, you know, Bill, I can get it over to you. Even Homeland Defense has some funds that we found out about last week for ports.
And that would be interesting too, because our fire and police have no access to.
We've not had the opportunity to meet you before. Sounds
Okay.
like you're very busy in the community, and thank you for that.
Right.
We need all the leadership we can get from everyone who wants to jump in. Look at a town called Athens, Texas. Sounds just like yours. A carrier that's hoping to bring service to Moorpark called One Ring. Went in there 3 years ago on a PP3. Worked with the city. They now have lots of broadband, wireless. Athens, Texas.
What's the name? One Ring?
One Ring.
So we got an email from Greg. We're talking to Paul this morning about the Reconnect program, and they've been rolling out webinars and talking about their funding until the shutdown.
Yeah.
They had a whole published schedule of when they had, and I was able to sit through, you know, back in December, the webinar, and it's a fabulous program. I think it's very applicable, got me really lit up and excited about it. Yeah. And then I was telling a friend and I mean, telling everybody, this is really cool, and we gotta wait.
There's a number of ports and counties in Washington and Oregon that have received Reconnect money. It's not a lot of money. You get $50,000, and then it's a matching grant. So you got to come up with the matching portion. But you know, it's still a good start. We're working with about half a dozen ports and counties up in Oregon and Washington. Keene County, Pierce County, Marion County, Jefferson County, and all of them are looking at the county working to facilitate the expansion of broadband. And in the case of ports, and especially ports that have utilities, the utilities are looking at getting into the game and looking at providing commercial and residential broadband in areas that they've already have aerial fiber. And we're looking at opportunities to expand that using the grant monies to study expanding it to commercial zones and to anchor institutions.
What about California Technology Fund for him?
Yeah.
So they funded other cities like you, sound just like yours.
You talking about CETF?
Yes.
I don't know, if they do that kind of stuff. If you're running into Sunnyman Peak and CTF at all, the California Emerging Technology Fund, that'd be worth checking out. They might at least do bird dog if they don't have some.
Yeah, they did boron or something like that a few years ago.
No, that was CSF.
Oh, okay, I stand corrected, it was CSF.
Yeah, they CPUC did that boron. Hader in Thousand Oaks, so do you have any updates you wanna pass on to the group?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, we had a meeting with you guys, with, you and Sasha, and, just, hopefully can get together again and
Yep.
see where we can go.
Thousand Oaks is uniquely positioned for the whole smart city activity. They've got, quite a bit of fiber in terms of the footprint. The old Verizon activities, or actually GTE before that, was all based up in Thousand Oaks, and so they had a lot of infrastructure put in years ago, and, they're waiting for that smart city discussion to kick in, and so, I think that, we wanna have those conversations as well as this thing unfolds. I've talked to everybody about the county. Brian, do you wanna just give us a quick update in terms of where you're coming from and thoughts that you might have, hearing what everybody's talking about here?
Yeah, I think most of it's been said already, and I really like the golden ground analogy. And I agree, and working with a few of the cities that are in the area, and we are beginning the contract process with Magellan. So I think we're gonna be joining that group. I think the county's role from the discussions that we've had so far is that middle mile as the cities build out all of their networks. The connections between those networks to build a larger regional is gonna be something that the county will be involved in, so I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussions before we move on to website? Great, let me get you,
All right, so to reinforce our commitment to support all of you, no, actually, I think you just switched to the other, input. There's this cable.
Oh, you
plug that one in, and I think we're good, so you unplug this one.
Oh, nice, okay.
Plug that one. We'll see if the magic happens.
It's Chromecast. Do it wirelessly.
That's interesting.
There we go.
You're there.
So this, the new website has a public-facing component for the general public, then we have a backside for everybody in the room and everybody that's vested. You know, do a little bit more marketing, promoting our video from the summit from last year on the website, so everybody can have access to that kind of thing. What the resources, smart cities, what we represent, who's participating, our social media links, those kind of things. The mapping and data resources are for primarily our use. The general public's not gonna get much use out of it, and when the government shutdown is over, we hope, those maps will come back to life. So news and legislation is the highlights of what's going on regionally and nationally. So those kind of things we can stay up to date better. The participants highlights who's in the group and what they're doing. Smart cities is an explanation basically of what a smart city is. We have some resources. Steve Weingart, I think, gave us this link to this great video about what 5G is and how it works and what the challenges are. Glossary of terms. Sasha worked hard to produce this so that we can educate ourselves and the public as to what the nomenclature that we're using is. Internship opportunities. We're going to be trying to attract students that can come in and help support the mission. This is an application form that they can fill out online, submit to us, and we'll review to try to bring people in. Contact us gives the general public the basic ability to reach out to the primary contacts that the consortium has. Internet speed test allows people to come on and take the test and then submit their rates to us so we can get a better understanding of where the underserved and the underperforming lie. Register for the website. All of you can do this, and all of you I would encourage to do this. This way you can get access to the back end. You'll be sent a key through the registration process, and you just click on it and get access, and we'll go through what that involves in a second. Get involved, basically a participation application so that people from the outside, we grow our membership and we'll require more seats in the room to be able to accommodate everybody. Groups is part of the mechanism that is in the backside. You can't really see anything at this level, but once you're logged in, these become much more participatory and collaborative. The events represents the calendar of events of what's coming up, and so we'll populate this great and to a greater degree, but you can just do the mouse over where it is, when it is, those kind of things. You can click on the listing and it gives you better definition as well as a map of where the location is, that kind of thing, so that everybody can find us. There's a quick tab to the events up here as well, and then register takes you back to that form, and then log in. We'll do that real quick, and I'll show you what is in the backside. Basically, once you're logged in, under your guest account, you can see your recent activity, what other people are doing. You can modify your profile. You can check any unread notifications. You can communicate amongst yourselves. So you have this kind of thing. Everybody will have this kind of access. You can send messages to each other. You can start a new thread. You can see who your friends are, because we're all friendly in the room, those kind of things. And then back to the groups. You can join any of these groups. We'll have the meeting minutes posted here, so if you click on this, we'll have a list of the meeting minutes. You'll be able to see from any of these points what recent documents have been posted. I just posted the sample document of the anchor institutions. I need to work on the font size clearly. But you know, you would have access to be able to post your own documents and whatever else you wanted to share. Who's online will allow everybody that's logged in to be listed so that you can see if you wanted to start a conversation with somebody, click on that and be able to generate that. So basically the collaborative aspect of what we wanted to accomplish with the website, make it a greater resource for all of us as well as the general public. I think adding a button that says funding resources would be good to add, and populating that so that we're all on the same page of those kind of things. And really the goal is to have you post documents, have you share what has been learned and best practices so that we're all better off as a group.
So growing up in the IT area and somewhat academic about all of this, I know that painfully aware that 4 out of 5 IT projects fail. 80%. The implementation is where they fail, you know, in terms of this is really good stuff. It has the capacity to be very helpful to us. But changing behavior and trying to have it have value that we really reach out and try to go to it is a process, and it's an ongoing process, and you gotta lean into it. And so we're not gonna go very far very fast, but we're gonna go. You know, that's kind of the attitude that we're gonna have. We tried this a few years ago with a product called Group Sites to get into collaboration, and if you build it, will they come? Not necessarily. You know, and I think what we're going to do, we've got some fundamental tools that are available to us now, and you know, I think every week I'll, you know, as I email all of you through email and keep us all connected, I'll drop subtle hints and breadcrumbs about check this out or take a look at this. I think it's going to take a year or two of continuing to move gradually in this direction so we all develop it as a tool that works for us. Because the odds are against us, frankly, and yet it is quite essential that we have some way that we do collaborate and capture the data that we're all sharing with one another and to archive it. So the platform of some sort is very, very important to us, but we'll take it very slow and try to be real wise about it and not oversell it as something that it's not.
What kind of data are you gathering during the speed test?
Up and down speeds, up and down rates.
Are you collecting any information like address, business name?
Yes, all that kind of thing will be voluntary whether they wish to supply that, but yes, we're asking.
And you're picking up email address, contact
Correct,
information.
so we'll build a database of contacts from that for sure. Anything else?
You're making it,
Go
going
ahead.
to make it mobile friendly?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's currently not a responsive website with a template you're using, so.
It is, it has to get down below 380 pixels, and I've had a little bit of trouble getting that to be consistent across the board. You can see on mine that it works perfectly, but you know, it's one of those things where it doesn't work perfectly on everybody's at this point, so I need to get rid of that.
Always works on the developers.
Of course, that's right.
And I couldn't see, was there a search, global search?
Yes, there is, absolutely. This is the back end from the admin. We'll have statistics on site usage, bounce rates, all the kind of pertinent things that we'll need to know so that when people log in or look through the site, we'll know what top pages they're looking at, where they're coming from, what operating systems, all those kind of sundry things.
Greg, you know, following up on Keith's comment, okay, I think most of us are right now not going into reading. Is there some way that we could use video to?
Of course, yeah, we can
I
populate
mean,
the
to
video
create
wherever possible.
something.
The search engines still prefer text, so even if we just have the text to be able to get indexed against, and then we can have video to have people have it more digestible, sure, totally.
Bob, you might do a scrub on everything that you've done and give us a list so we can link to it. Just to make sure it's available. And
Sure.
Content wise.
Yeah.
We're also gonna rely very heavily on this one. I mean, he's a different generation, and he comes up with attitudes and approaches we old fogies don't even realize. And so, I mean, it's the acid test, if it works for him, boy, he can see it farther than we might be able to see, and so getting Sasha to help us with, and maybe even train an intern or two and augment it with some social media ideas is gonna be integral to me.
You know, as I mentioned, we actually have a charter high school that opened up right next door.
Yeah.
We might be able to use some of their students to
Good
really
idea,
help.
Bob.
On funding, some of it I realize might be competitive, but it seems like some might be where, like you sitting from Santa Paula and say, boy, and my sister cities would also, you know, could get on this application. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
So we
Yeah,
can kind of have each other's backs.
Come on in, the water's fine. I mean, it's really, we want as much support as we can, because in the transformation, all the cities are gonna have to go through, you're gonna need your own aspect. Right now, you've broken it down into Ventura County and Santa Barbara County and SLO, but I think we could go down to a city level where you could be using this site to mobilize your own resources, ensure that your own plans to the resources you have.
And at this point, you can create your own group, so if you see the need for a subgroup, go ahead and create it and then invite whoever you wish to participate.
Yeah, we'd like to have all the pertinent data, federal, state, local, available to you. You know, and these conversations available to you. You know, so, but you're gonna have to do what you wanna do with them as a community. You know, and it's gonna be very different than any other community. Each community is doing it in what works for you. But we want the platform, even Quion.
So Brian brought up NDAs yesterday in our discussion about data, and security in general. What do we keep secure? If we're
Everything
gonna
we
share,
keep secure, it's under an SSL. We have a DigiCert SSL that's verified, and so the front end and the back end is secure. We don't share the data with any third-party vendors. We keep everything.
so you're validating people who sign up for accounts?
Correct.
How are you
And we're also
validating?
moderating their comments before they're made live.
So how do you validate that it's a person who should have access to that data?
Good question.
We have the application form that it will require a key, and then we'll be notified immediately about their application, and we can see if they are or not, you know, qualified to participate, and we can invalidate anything that we need.
So that's after the fact. So they already
So it's simultaneous
they
with
see
the
all the
fact,
GIS
actually.
data we've shared, and then
No.
later we catch them.
No, because there is the step between them being able to sign up and register and us validating that. So we will have
I think we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
So So the activation key came automatically when I just logged in.
Oh, nice.
No human
There we go.
validated that I should be seeing the GIS county data that's there, so.
Okay, and that's important to know, because to this point, everything's been prima facie full disclosure, so if there is data that we need to hide,
Well, that's the
and,
topic that Brian brought up is, do we share, like we do crime maps, but we dumb it down to the 100 blocks, so we're not identifying the area. Do we do the same thing with the fiber maps that we're sharing, or the fiber data?
everything that we have on the front end is publicly accessible, like clicking on a
Is it?
link to take it to you directly. Anything that you post when you're registered and you're logged in will not be available to the general public. You'll have to log in before you have access to that. So if you share something within a group, or you create a new group, or any of those kind of things, it requires a login to be able to view it.
Yeah, this other little, I hate to do it, red skill, but for the public employees and the electeds in the room, make sure you have some idea of how you're gonna handle public records requests. So if you're using this for project management, certainly you're gonna kind of run into trouble. For sharing a resource, you're probably okay.
Yeah, I'll share with the group that, I've gone 180 degrees on this topic of security. When we first started doing the analysis, Steve Blum did for us, and he had some great maps, and, you know, everything that he did in terms of his analysis and the report cards, you know, it's on his website, and it's shared and available to the public and everybody, and I just was moving on thinking that, yeah, if it's free and available, why not? The problem is, you start aggregating this and adding knowledge to it and creating a system from it. And if you create a system map and you say, here's what a regional network looks like, here's where it goes, it all of a sudden becomes very easy to take down. Yeah, and so, and that's where this 180-degree turn that I've taken on it is, I'm very worried about, even though portions of it, you can find it anywhere and it's rapidly available, when you add intelligence to it, when you show what it does and make it, you know, very critical, you really want to guard it, and I wouldn't want to, the need to know is probably a very important aspect of this conversation that we need to enter in, start managing and being aware of. It's one thing when you're talking about this and brainstorming, it's another thing when you're actually building and it's becoming very integral to the service it provides to your communities. And so, this is a great conversation. We're gonna have many more on this topic.
Every meeting probably, security needs to be part of it.
And we don't wanna just have a free-for-all with information. You know, architectures, you know, layouts, designs, topologies. It's okay to talk about fiber from here to there, but when you start talking about fiber everywhere and where it goes, we're gonna have to.
Well, just to finish up your thought, Brian, there's government code sections, everybody knows, there's government code sections that prevent the release of information to the public that would reveal vulnerability in the PRA code. So, but if we give information, then it's up to the person we gave the information to not reveal it. We have to sanitize it first before we share it.
So we do have to probably create our own policy about what's available on the back end to who.
Right.
And if it's going to be mission critical, we may not want to have it on the website, or we want to make sure that people accessing it truly do have a need to know.
Or you know that it's exempt from PRA.
And so there are rules when you post a document about who can see it, and you can define those rules as well as another layer. For some reason we lost it up here, but once you're logged in, you'll be able to say which group can have access to it, who can read it, who can edit it, all those kind of things as well. So there's another layer on top of just logging in that will help you define who has access or not.
Hot swap it.
All right, perfect.
Any other topics or thoughts about websites before we move on?
Good job.
Good job.
Thank
Really
you.
good.
Thank
Really
you.
good.
I appreciate that. It's been an arduous journey, but we're getting there for sure. Yeah, compared to what we had previously up there, it's night and day, so thank you.
So I was hoping to just pick your brains a little bit about October. That's when we have our next summit. And one of the thoughts, the first one was, you know, how do you spell broadband? And the next one was, well, we talked about transportation as it relates to broadband. And I think we've done a great job of creating an imperative and awareness, and but these tend to serve as a tipping point. And what we really want to do is start figuring out what are the outcomes that we desire for the one in the fall. And one of the thoughts that I had was, and we've talked about it a number of times in a number of different ways, is recognizing broadband's not just an IT problem. It's a leadership, a challenge. We need the leadership. It's a public works kind of activity, in terms of this. But it is the entire municipality, not just one department. And it's transformational for not only the municipality, but the whole community at large and all the aspects to it, all the anchor institutions to it. But I'm interested in just hearing your thoughts of what areas do we want to try to get leverage, or what kinds of speakers would be interesting to hear, or just to start spitballing ideas for what would be really useful information to share in another 7-8 months.
Healthcare.
Healthcare.
We're seeing a lot of business in healthcare providers, hospitals, clinics. They're building, we install DAS networks and small cell networks inside of them, and they're using them inside, and then they're having to connect to the world at large and share. So, sorry.
No, you finish up your thought, because I was.
Yeah, another thought.
Yeah, well, selfishly, smart city advocacy,
Right.
from municipalities, not only it's an interesting subject, municipal road networks, you have regional networks, maybe kind of wonky, but that's selfishly from our standpoint. I remember I think the first year it was Kansas City.
Yes.
That presentation, that was really interesting to see what we can do in the cities, but once again, that's selfish from a municipal standpoint.
CenturyLink has offered to send their speaker. They have 13 smart cities working today, mostly in the southeast. But Chip has, I'll get you his contact information. He spoke to the city of Los Angeles about 6 months ago. I was present in that meeting. They had all of their IT leadership there, and it was kind of like your autonomous car. It hit a lot of people what could be done. Mm-hmm. But CenturyLink will be the first to admit these were new cities. They didn't convert an old city. They were all new cities. Hmm. So, new sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Collaboration, at a granular level from within the cities and municipalities, and then expanding that thought to city, I think is the way to get to smart cities. And I think that we have to start with the idea of having cars zooming around is great, but we gotta build the roads first. And how do we do that, and who do we get involved, and all those kind of which departments, and really having everybody in the room that can understand. It's not an ideal to collaborate, it's a mandate to collaborate, to be able to accomplish that.
A few meetings ago, you had the supervisor from Santa Cruz County talk about what they did in public policy to move a problem that had existed with building broadband fiber specifically in the city. And they came up with a new rule set. He was willing to share that with anyone in the room. I've kind of been tracking Santa Cruz, very, very similar to Santa Paula in the sense that they've got a lot of people who commute to another city, San Jose, to get broadband. They don't really have any. And they wanted to change that paradigm because apparently the ride from Santa Cruz to San Jose is an hour and a half each way, and they don't have, they've expanded to 17, so as many lanes as they're gonna have, and they still have hour and a half drive to drive 18 miles. So the point is, it would be interesting, possibly, I'm just suggesting, that I have a re-conversation with that gentleman, that supervisor, to see what's been the causal effect, because they have broadband there in Santa Cruz now, and they've lit those buildings. This is my understanding of a PP3.
I forget his name, but he's a professor at Moore Park in he works with Consortium presentations, you know?
No.
Yeah, we got him.
But he came and gave a talk in Santa Paula, but partly it was about, he'll give you traffic in and out, and I think that'd be useful to see the mobility around the county. And he also talks about, just, you know, people moving out, you know, the different 5 rings of poverty up and down. And I'd be curious to see kind of an economic analysis, what it means if we become, broadband heavy, but other cities around the country do it at the same time. So, you know, are we gonna see the benefits we get if now people are competing like medically, they don't have to go anywhere, they just get online. So I'd like to see that kind of, local, you know, 3-county economic analysis and people moving around as compared to a national competitor. But his talk was great. He gave a talk along with Bruce.
That sounds
Ventura
really
County.
good.
So I can find that name.
Well, Bruce has got a lot of that, he cites the numbers about us being an we export jobs, you know,
Yeah,
on the 101.
Sure.
Right.
And we go north and south.
Well, they're between cities exporting jobs.
Yeah,
You know,
it
you've got
would be very interesting if, to get some metrics of, as we get more broadband capacity, will people stay home? And can we change that effect?
Well, inversely, if people are doing more remote work, we live in a very high cost of living area, so.
It would be very interesting, good suggestion.
Bill, I also wanted to point out, and this is you don't like me very much, really, that is, that we've had an amazing deafening silence from the service providers that serve our area. Frontier has sent representatives to these meetings, they don't say anything. We have this gentleman from Spectrum, great guy, don't hear much from Spectrum. They've got a huge amount of data we'd love to get our hands on in terms of who's buying what their bandwidth is, what are their plans in the community? Do they have any plans in our community, you know, to build out, to help us? You know, I haven't seen it.
See, I don't want to put you on the spot. You gave me a great brochure on smart cities. Right. It knocked my socks off. Yeah. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we can share some of that knowledge or experience or your plans with where you want to you know, to the whole.
Yeah, I mean, I can get together with Gil Deming and.
You know, you guys are doing some great work, and you know, I think we certainly want to capitalize on your plans.
Yeah.
By having, we all want the water to rise at the same time.
Yeah, well, that brochure I shared with you also was sent to the councils, members of the cities that we serve, so.
I haven't done anything with it, but I think that if you want to brief it or present it at some point, you know,
Yeah,
I think that'd
there's
be.
also a website that we have available for, you know, our smart city plans and what we have available and how we can partner with cities and let them know what we have available, what we're planning to do.
I wanted to make that available so everybody can see it. Well done, good, great job.
That's good, but again, Frontier, you know, they have the keys to the safe here. And, you know, in my work, I get complaints daily, okay? And I have some real concerns, the trend I've seen from Frontier, and they don't have a response. And that is that a lot of my customers here have old copper, and when the copper's dead, or the copper's a problem, and I think you've seen the same thing, they don't want to repair it. They just turn their back to it. And I don't get a response, all right? It's like, okay, so what's the alternative? You know, I gotta put them on Spectrum, well, hey, great, it's assuming Spectrum services it, I'm good. I'm better, actually, they have a better deal, right? But they're the local incumbent carrier, you know, the PUC carrier, you know, and that, I just don't see, you know, how shall I say, the activity correct the situation. And this gentleman shaking his head, I'm sure you've run into it as well. You know, I've got a customer in Oxnard right now. I've been there 30 years. All of a sudden, they've lost their DSL service for the past 6 months. And Frontier's been out a million times. Frontier blames AT&T. I don't know. But the point is, they've been abandoned. That's the problem, the reason I'm bringing it up by Frontier. Okay.
If I may just chime in on a couple things. One, since we're all picking on Spectrum.
Yeah.
You know,
I wasn't picking on Spectrum.
Or in general, you know, from the city side, you know, our goal in Moore Park is to get someone, and I don't really care who it is, to hit our unserved areas.
Get it fixed.
I've met with at least 4 ISPs that were directly from coming to this meeting, some in the room, some not in the room today. I have spent hours with them and toured with them. I've seen their service maps, and what we're trying to do is make the pitch that there is demand here, and you can make money, and we can get service. And we're trying to get that information. I don't think it's in our experience, it's not that the effect of the spectrum has, as we mentioned it, that was sent to my council, and it was immediately forwarded to me. And a conversation and series of meetings has developed from that. It's having the desired effect. I'd like it to have all happened yesterday, but there is, movement there.
John likes my comment about this being the Wild West. This is, we're gonna have, it's a very innovative time in this space. And you're gonna have those that really take full advantage of it and those that can't hardly navigate. And just let it play itself out, let it happen. And you're gonna have transformation occurring in some old organizations, and you're gonna have startups occurring in new organizations, but it's the Wild West, and it's gonna be a different time in 10 years, 5 years.
No question.
Bill,
It's being reshaped as we watch.
and also we talked about this before too, we don't see it as a one size fits all, one provider fits all, or one modality. So, once again, part of the Wild West is putting together maybe a hybrid of solutions that works.
Second thing, just related to your question, I think that the summit's been very effective in getting the electeds, getting the political will there. At some point, and maybe it's not going to be 2019, but 2020, to bring everything down to a much more local level. I can't pick up the phone and call Kansas City IT like I can call Oxnard today. And I hear these abstractions of what Caltrans is doing or Contra Costa County. It's great, it sounds great, but to translate to what I actually need to do, I don't want to have conversations with my council about drone parking on my streetlights. I'm much more in the mundane of when we discovered that there is a certain plug, a standard, that there is a standard, communications, plug, my layman's term, that you can put on your LED streetlights and you convert it. We just want to make sure we have that plug. That is much more valuable to us than self-driving cars, for which, at the city level, is not something that we are going to be directly doing anytime soon. But that plug, that's the decision we need to make now. So if we can get, whether Oxnard or Ventura or the Office of Education or whoever else is out there who has local successes, look, we've got a dig once policy. This is an example of where it worked. The rest of you need to do this right now. And when we can pick that really local, then you get the city managers and the councils telling their staffs, we need a dig once policy, Brian, go work on that. And I think that's the corner we need to turn at some point.
Bring it local, make it local.
I have a couple of slide decks of what we're doing in Santa Monica that might be helpful in the area of smart city. We've implemented a dozen smart city applications that might speak to something for everybody. Not everybody needs all of the above, but more bits and pieces that we can track with city and city.
I like the idea of a smart city quick start kind of approach. Where you might take some of those ideas and make it local, and just be able to take the first step using this technology. But it's not only the infrastructure we've been talking about, but also its use.
But it's local. You can go drive over there and I can tell you who to talk to and they'll show it to you. It's working.
Interesting.
How many people do you expect will be there this year? No.
I think 150.
Still the same location?
Yeah, the room has a capacity of 199. But we started with about 75, and we got about 110 this last time, and it will continue to grow, I'm pretty sure.
So we'll still be in the same room probably. So the, Tim Cool, you still on the phone?
Yep, still here.
Was that your dog barking?
No, I'm in my office.
So, what was the book you recommended yesterday from, I think, Susan Crawford?
Yeah, it's called Fiber, The Coming Tech Revolution and Why America Might Miss It.
A lot of the concepts in there might be good for a keynote address, whether it's someone like Jory or Susan. I doubt we could get her to a small venue like this, but to set the stage. So lots of rabbit trails we can go down, but setting the whole stage at the beginning for this coming tech revolution.
Yeah, I love the title. Tim, could you send me the title, and I'm gonna look at it on Amazon, and I'll pass it on to you guys.
The other thing we need to do is be sure to get Trade Desk and Centec and all the big players and all the different places into that room as well. They have a vested interest in this, and they definitely have a voice about what they want to see have happen. I'll work on that. If anybody else has any invitees they'd like to see, either reach out to them directly or let us know, we'll reach out to them.
I'm going through the education phase with my city, and I'd like to be able to invite department heads, council members,
Absolutely.
people like that. We don't, it's not clicking yet.
Especially if there's a collaborative component, you know, that'll really bring home to them.
I think so.
So you just given me a direction. What if we try to, as an objective for this next event, is tell a friend, is invite your peers. And as we design the agenda, you know, let's come back with that in mind and talk about it and say, you know, would this help inform and educate, would this help, you know, and use that whole agenda as how we might talk about, you know, where you talk about public works and streetlights and, you know, all the various aspects. What are they gonna wanna hear and why is it gonna be important to them, and try to let them in on those aha moments and design the program that way. That may be a great angle to try to push towards.
If you're gonna do that, my suggestion would be, and it's along what you're saying, is try to keep it simple, right? So if you're trying to bring in constituents who, this topic is can be very overwhelming, right? So you wanna try to bring it down to what can you do today and how will this affect your constituents? Instead of, you know, there's a lot about out there that's high technology stuff in the future, but.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of this.
10 o'clock. I think we're at quitting time. I wanna try to honor, I had another slide or two, but I'll share it to you, or you can see I don't wanna go overtime on this at all. So I lost track of the time, sorry about that.
It's been a good meeting.
Yeah, and would have typically wanted to go around the room and, you know, gather any other thoughts that you might have, but we can certainly continue talking after the meeting's adjourned. And with that, the meeting's adjourned.